Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno. What a fight. UFC 256 main event delivered in spades. Was amazing. Back and forth. Crazy stuff. Loved every second of it. Hearing a lot of people say, you know what? This came out of nowhere and snagged fight of the year contender. It's definitely up there. Matt, what do you think? Is this fight of the year?
It was a very entertaining fight, but no, it's not. And I'm not entertaining this talk. Just kidding. No, it was a very, very entertaining fight. I missed the first couple of rounds because I was not home at the moment, coming back from my nephew's attempt at a state title run for Texas football, so I could not miss that. But I did go back and watch the entire fight, and it was incredible. It was an incredible fight. Was it fight of the year, though? I would like to remind everybody of a little fight between Joanna Jedrzejczyk and Weili Zhang, which took place in March of this year, UFC 248. That, ladies and gentlemen, is fight of the year, hands down. And the reason why is because this fifth round kind of fell off. Rounds 1 through 4 were bangers. 1 through 4 were bangers. Round 5 fell off. Brandon Moreno had something going on with his arm. I mean, listen, Joe Rogan said his arm was broken, and you better believe it was broken because Joe Rogan said it was broken. Even though Moreno was like, nah, bro, it's my shoulder, I guess. I don't know. Something happened with my shoulder. But yeah, that really put a damper on the 5th round for me because it really slowed his pace down. Like he was trying to pressure forward, but he was really just feinting a lot with that arm. He was really kind of hesitant to throw with it. So that kind of sucks. And I don't know if it was just that and the fatigue finally start to set in. And, you know, maybe Figgy thought he had it in the bag in the 5th round. And so he kind of let off the gas a little bit. But I mean, if you want to say that if rounds 1 through 4 were the rounds of the year and you cut the fight off there, then yeah, maybe. But I can't give it fight of the year. What about you?
Ooh, it's tough. I mean, those are all the reasons that I would argue against it being fight of the year, especially, you know, Weili versus Joanna. I went back and rewatched that today after. Actually, I woke up this morning and was like, you know what, I got some time. You know, I'm gonna go ahead and check that out. Yeah, it's just, man, wall to wall, just in your face action, just great. I've seen a lot of people, and this is a good argument, that a lot of people say that the reason this is fight of the year is because it did show all the facets of MMA, right? Like Weili versus Joanna was great, but it was just like, we're going to stand in the pocket and just throw, which is super fun, but it is just boxing. This fight between Figueiredo and Moreno ranged every which way you took it. You had grappling, you had transitions on the ground, you had jiu-jitsu, you had in the pocket crazy, that 4th round just like wailing double arm from Figgy trying to hit Moreno as he took him down. I mean, that stuff was amazing. And then you had the 5th round where they kind of slowed down. And there is another factor here where, you know, as you mentioned, you think that Figgy took his foot off the gas. For me, I'm more inclined to think it's probably that stomach infection that he had and went to the hospital for. Right. Until 2 a.m. He was in the hospital until 2 a.m. before the day of the fight with the stomach infection. And then he got in there and fought. And then he was hospitalized after the fight. Like, that's insanity. That he went out there and threw and did as well as he did with some kind of crazy stomach thing going on. I mean, man, that's nuts. So you take those factors into consideration, and it's pretty even. I would say it's pretty up there. But that all being said, after watching both fights back to back, I got to go with you as well and say it's Weili versus Joanna, just because every second of that fight was entertaining. Wall to wall, 25 minutes of pure action. And as much as I loved what Figgy and Moreno did last night, there were some breaks. There were a couple of parts where they, you know, kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit to rest, you know, which makes sense. And then the 5th round, which was pretty slow compared to the rest of the fight. So I'm with you, but it is close. It is razor thin close for me.
Yeah, and I get the argument that some people are going with it because of the entire facet of MMA was on display over the course of this fight, which is cool, I guess, if you really want to see that from the fighters involved. You know what I mean? Like with Weili and Joanna, like I don't want to necessarily see them, battle it out on the ground. With these two, it kind of worked out because it's like, they're really, really scrappy on the ground. They're really scrambly. So it made for a lot of fun moments where, is he gonna be able to hold him down here? Nope, he's gonna be able to slither out and then scramble away and get back to the feet, and then all sorts of craziness was just going on there. But for example, if that happened in the Joanna Zhang fight, like I don't think it would have been like the same, right? It would have been like if somebody got down to the mat, there would have been like stall moments, and this fight didn't really provide that. So I guess that's good, and that's what made it exciting throughout. Like these were crazy exchanges on the feet, crazy exchanges on the mat as well. It just kept you wondering like what was happening next. For a lot of people, a lot of hardcore and like not hardcore, a lot of casual fans tuning in to a fight, they just want to see people throw hands. So I would assume that most casuals, even like somebody, let's say a boxing fan came over to watch one of these two fights, they would probably prefer the Joanna versus Weili fight because he was all stand up. It was just like, hey, I'm here, you're here. Who's going to fall next? Who's going to knock each other off their pivot? And it went like that for the course of the fight, which was just truly amazing. But you did mention something that was just absolutely insane when he said this after the fact, that he was in the hospital at 2:00 in the morning dealing with a stomach infection and still went out there and put on that sort of performance. So that's something you got to consider as well. But I don't know if I want to give that fight more points for it. I kind of want to question the commission. Like, why did this fight happen? The dude was in the hospital at 2:00 in the morning before he had to fight. Why was he allowed to fight? In a title fight, no less. And I know that, I don't know how much the UFC said, hey, we got to keep this fight together one way or another. We got to make sure this fight goes off because we already lost a title fight. We already lost Jan and Sterling. That was supposed to headline this card. So I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I'm not going to speculate too much, but if this were a normal sport, maybe a sport with an association perhaps, or some sort of players union or fighters union, maybe this fight doesn't go off. Maybe it doesn't. But to hear that he had a stomach infection and he was hospitalized literally that morning, in the wee hours of that morning, and he still fought and still put on a hell of a performance. I mean, you got to give it up to him for that, but it really just raises a whole nother, series of questions. Like, what is going on here behind the scenes, really?
Yeah. And before we dive a little bit more into that, make sure you like and subscribe. Let us know if you think this is fight of the year or not, if it beats Weili versus Joanna, what you use as criteria for fight of the year, because that's always good to know too, because people have different preferences there. But yeah, I mean, it's clearly right. They wanted this title fight to happen. They essentially, everyone wants to say, yeah, that's, Figgy's turning around and defending his belt 21 days after he fought. Well, the promotion really pushed for that to happen. And then he's got a stomach infection and he fights. Yeah, something tells me that you're right, that something's happening behind the scenes. There are certain, if you look, especially post, ESPN deal, but there's reason to believe that pay-per-views have to have title fights on them, with very rare exceptions. And that really rare exceptions are pretty much Conor McGregor. Other than that, they have to pretty much have a title fight on them. That's why they were scrambling to do Khabib versus Al Iaquinta, right? When that fight fell off at the 11th hour. It's kind of a thing. I'm sure somewhere in some legal binding contracts, there's something that mentions that. And that's part of the reason they push so hard. So yeah, that certainly could have played a factor. One thing I do want to go back to though, because you said casual fans, would be more into the, I want to see them stand there and bang aspect. And normally I'd agree with you, But what I would say about this fight is, and this is anecdotal too, so I can't say this for all casual fans, but we were hanging out and we had one of our friends on just in a group chat who ended up joining and watching part of it. And a big thing that he mentioned is once that fight was over, he said, wow, it's amazing. It's great. And he was like, yeah, normally I don't like MMA that much because they go to the ground and they're just hugging each other, right? Classic casual spiel. But he was like, but these were like crazy, like all over the place. You didn't know if he was going to like take him down and throw punches or if he was going to try and, sweep around. It was so fluid for him that he kind of understood what high level grappling was supposed to look like. And that's saying something, right? That's something in MMA we don't get to see as much, where, it's so like such a fluid ground exchange and scramble where you can tell, even as a casual, like that looks high level and that's entertaining, because that's usually the big barrier. Because as you said, most casuals just want to see people knock each other's heads off. I think this fight delivered, Figgy versus Moreno, in terms of giving us an entertaining 20 minutes. And had they kept that up in the 5th round, I would easily say, yes, this is my fight of the year for right now, which we could also get into because there's a couple more events coming, so you never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that's a rarity to hear a casual fan say, "Oh, that grappling looked cool."
Yeah. Like you said, it wasn't a lot of grappling and like stalling. It was just constant movement. If somebody got into a dominant position, it wasn't there for very long. It was some sort of crazy escape, and we're back to the feet a few seconds later. So that was cool, right? That was, I could see how a casual would say that for sure. Even though, like, I don't know if it necessarily shows off like high level grappling from both per se, because if one wasn't able to keep the other in a particular spot, I mean, that's good defense for sure, but it wasn't great offensive grappling. But it was still fun to watch. I don't want to take it away from that by any means. So, I mean, you got to give it up. Got to give them up for that. And one other thing real quick to go back to the, the whole stomach thing. As you mentioned, with the UFC really kind of forcing their hand at putting this fight on this card. Do you think that the infection possibly came from a guy like Figgy who weighs in, who's one of the first comments when he stepped into the octagon was, man, this guy looks huge. He's got to be weighing at least 150 right now, right? Do you think that this guy who cuts a lot of weight to make 125, doing that in, a month's time, twice, possibly exacerbated his stomach issues?
Yeah, I'd go ahead and say that's a safe bet.
Safe bet? Okay.
Yeah, safe bet. No, I mean, his weight cut has always been insane. As I mentioned in the preview show, the one time he lost was when he took a fight that was kind of short notice for him against Formiga, and he had to cut 37 pounds to get down to 125. That means he was walking around at 162. I mean, which is insanity. And so for him to make weight, which is already notoriously hard for him, as we saw even against the first Benavidez fight, right? Where he wasn't eligible to win the belt because he came in heavy. So he makes it for the second one, and then he comes around, makes it again against Perez, and then you've got to 21 days. I think that definitely caused some stomach issues. I would not be shocked at all if that's why this happened. It's nuts. He's probably he'll need to move up at some point, I would imagine. If he's cutting that much weight, if he's weighing 150, or I think he said something to the effect this past week thought he was going to weigh 143 or 44, which was lighter for him in the cage. That when he was going to rehydrate, he was 144. Like, that can't be good for your health. That's got to take a toll on your body.
Listen, yeah, no, 100%. I 100% agree. But listen, in determining for, the fight of the year, outside of just what happens inside of the cage, surely maybe you have to consider, elements surrounding the fight in general, right? Like, what did the fight mean? I generally kind of think of those sort of things as well. Like, if there's a 3-round prelim fight that was just bonkers, like if the first 3 rounds of this fight was the first fight of the night, yeah, it won fight of the night. Would I be calling it fight of the year? I don't know. But here we get 5 rounds of just incredible fighting. And I guess I want to know which people weigh more. This fight, which was, going to be the moment where Brandon Moreno, the guy who barely made it through tough, leaves the UFC, comes back, wins the title. Or was it going to be a Deiveson Figueiredo starting this massive run through the 125 division with that belt, starting to chase DJ's record, right? And then you have the stomach issue, you find out after, and then it ends in a majority draw. Or do you look at Joanna versus Weili Zhang? Hell of a fight, the former strawweight champ, like everybody loves Joanna, right? Because she just goes in there and bangs it out every single time. Weili Zhang, still relatively fresh to a lot of people, goes out there. They just stand and bang for 25 minutes, and she brings the belt to China. And that's like a huge thing for China, right? Which surrounding elements do you weigh more when it comes to the fight? For me, it's the Weili Zhang one. But I don't know how much people are also considering when they're weighing these two. If these are your 1 and 2, I don't know if there's a third fight that you guys are thinking that may be ahead of these two. For me, it's Weili Zhang and Joanna, and this is number 2 between Moreno and Figueiredo.
Yeah, no, I've heard Poirier versus Hooker thrown in that mix. I think that's a great fight, but
great fight too.
I've heard Burgos Emmett also is in contention, which I would say was an amazing fight. I don't think it comes to the level of Weili or Figgy versus Moreno. So I'm with you there, and yeah, definitely let us know in the comments if there's any other fights in your mind that should be fight of the year contender. And yeah, you brought up a great point that in terms of this majority draw, right? Because Joanna versus Weili was a split decision, and it was very close. It was, again, great fight, very close. But it is important to point out that this was a majority draw because of a low blow, which I think is a factor we haven't really touched on yet. Is that really, that does take away a little bit of the shine. 21 days, stomach infection, craziness, all aside, the fact that a low blow cost a point that led to a majority draw, which, by the way, those judges' scorecards were all over the place, which was another thing. If you looked into the actual scorecards, they were all different. So that is another concerning thing. But, yeah, when you factor in that low blow, I'm glad you brought that up, because when you factor that into me now, I'm more confident on leaning towards Weili versus Joanna myself.
Yeah, so. And it was a justified point as well, because you had the eye poke before that, and then you had that just blatant nut punt. Like that wasn't even he wasn't even attempting an inside leg kick. It was like he straight up just punched him right in the dick. And it's like what were you trying to achieve there besides what happened? Like that was the only outcome possible from that strike.
Yeah, it was a soccer kick, just straight to the dick. And I thought I was worried it was going to get called off because Moreno started coughing, and if you throw up, if you throw up in the octagon, it's over. That's not a lot of people know that the rules have changed. If there is any sort of bodily fluid that's not blood that comes out of you, that's it. So I was worried there. I was like, oh crap, we're about to get a DQ from a nut shot after what was an amazing fight. And then they picked it right back up. It didn't affect the fight too much, which was great. I was worried that could, play a major factor. Didn't seem to. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty bad. So good on Herzog for taking that point, because that's not always done. So I'm with you there. Again, let us know in the comments what you think fight of the year is. If it is Figgy Moreno, tell us why. If it's something else, let us know. Let us know what your criteria is. We will be releasing our end of the year, awards where we're talking about fighter of the year, breakout fighter of the year, fight of the year, all of that. We will wait until after Ryzen 26 has taken place. So we're talking about 2021 when that will come out, just in case something sneaks in there. But, with that in mind, any other thoughts to wrap this up, Mr. Wells?
No, that's about it, man. Hell of a way to almost end the year. But was it with this fight? Like you said, a couple more cards. I'm kind of hoping something pops up and steals the show. Give us another fight to enter into this conversation in these last couple of weeks. That would be pretty dope.
Yeah, no, I am secretly hoping that Thompson versus Neal is just everything we want it to be, and it steals it. That would be amazing. That's 5 rounds. So we'll see.